Delighted to welcome, though, my next guest. He's former leader of the Brexit Party and the Reform Party. He's now a retired politician, Nigel Farage. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Oh, whoever saw the day. You've retired lots of times before, Mr. Farage. I'm wondering whether we'll see you back on the front line again anytime soon. Is this it now?
Well, the issue, Julia, that got me into politics was our membership of what in 1993 became the European Union. You know, it had been the common market, the European community. When it became the European Union, I made a decision to say I thought this was completely the wrong direction for our country. If it hadn't been for this issue, I would never even have stood for local council. This is what got me into politics. And yes, you're right. In 2016, after the referendum, I did stand down as leader of UKIP because we'd had the referendum, we'd voted to leave, and I thought we were living in a functioning Western democracy. Little did I know the extent to which many in the political and media class would try and betray that result. And that's why I came back. You know, my second incarnation, setting up the Brexit Party, winning those European elections, and finally forcing the Conservatives to see sense. So now that we have left, the transition period is over, the vaccine rollout is a massive success compared to the rest of the European Union. There is no prospect of us rejoining. And whilst I do fully support the agenda that Reform UK stands for, which says, you know, the House of Lords, the postal voting system, our electoral system, all of these things are desperately out of date. You know, living in the 21st century with a 19th century set of institutions, our tax system is desperately complex and hurts those on lowest incomes and running smaller businesses. So there's so much that needs to happen. But for me, fighting campaigns, standing in elections, I've done my bit because Europe, the European Union, was the issue. So Richard Tice takes that on from me, and it's a heck of a tough job. But he really is G'd up to do it, and he will launch with those policies, or some of those policies, today.
Well, it's interesting. And again, it's interesting. The Remainers on Twitter, when this news came out, were all saying, wow, well, you know, you failed, 7 times to be an MP, rather ignoring the fact you were an MEP for many years. And probably, I think on an objective basis, the most influential politician of your generation in terms of what was actually achieved, rather than just not becoming a backbench parliamentary MP.
On the election stuff, Julia, I would point back to those people. I am the only person in British history who has won 2 national elections leading 2 different parties. That's not a bad election record.
It isn't indeed. Now, you're going to move into a fight against the woke agenda. This is something you have been fighting against for a very long time. That will tie us in very nicely with one of the leaders of the woke agenda, perhaps now, is Meghan and Prince Harry. We'll come on to them in just a few moments. I'd love to get your thoughts on that interview last night. But in terms of battling the woke agenda, what do you mean by that, and what do you plan to do?
Well, it's very difficult to fight elections on this issue, because you can point out what is going wrong in our primary schools, our secondary schools, our universities. And then come the election, Boris Johnson will say, oh, it's all nonsense. We won't let this sort of thing go on. And the Daily Mail say, isn't he wonderful? You know, my previous battles have been much clearer. I want to leave the European Union. The Labour and Conservative parties wanted to remain members of it. So I don't think making that an electoral issue is very easy. But what I do want to do, and I will use social media and mainstream media to do this, what I do want is for parents of children going through our primary and secondary education to stand up to the hijacking of the agenda by the extreme left. There are little examples, such as the name of Winston Churchill now being damned and schools dropping his name from houses within the schools. But there's much more serious stuff than that going on.
Well, that's it. A lot of people say, oh, look, this stuff doesn't matter. And yet the sort of the rewriting of our history, our culture, the idea that, again, this has come a lot from America, this idea that America was founded on slavery and on racism. That's sort of integral to every aspect of American institutions. Even if that were the case, which I don't believe it is, it's certainly not the case for this country. But this idea that everything that happened up to, almost 10 minutes ago was wrong, racist, sexist, transphobic, any it or ist you can think of, and trying to rewrite history, whether it's our comedies, whether it's our history, whether it's our pop songs or our children's books. Everything it's almost like we're moving to sort of year zero Mao territory, where nothing that happened before last year is allowed to stand.
Well, this is Trotskyism, isn't it? You know, the whole object of Trotsky for years and years and years was to rubbish not just the Tsar, but absolutely everything that Russia stood for, to lead to a revolution, to bring down the established order. And let's be in no doubt that what is behind much of this is a new Marxist, Trotskyite type agenda. They want us to hate our country, to hate its history, to hate everything we've ever stood for. And when that happens, the glorious communist revolution will come. The problem is, whilst they're a small minority, because of cancel culture and political correctness, too few people have got the courage to stand up to this stuff. I get emails, Julia, every single day from people who are teachers, people who are police officers, people who work in the civil service, you know, being told, telling me that they're virtually being told to be ashamed of the fact they're white, and yet none of them will come on your program because they all fear losing their jobs. And I do think, as I say, I do think the indoctrination of young people in schools, the lack of critical thinking that is being taught is something that really needs to be fought. And I don't see Gavin Williamson doing a single thing about it. I really don't.
Okay, well, that brings us on to just a final question to you. It's about the big royal interview with Oprah Winfrey last night. Anyone thinking that was just going to be, you know, we'd heard the best in the trailers? Absolutely not. Bombshell revelations. Crucially, I think the one that a lot of people are focusing on is Meghan suggesting that Buckingham Palace didn't want her son Archie to be a prince, and claiming there were concerns about how dark his skin might be. Let's have a little listen to what she and Oprah said.
About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
Well, that's on ITV at 9 o'clock tonight. That's courtesy of Harpo Productions and CBS. I think a lot of people are going to be watching that tonight. What do you make of her allegations that a senior member of the royal family was racist about her unborn baby?
The use of the word potentially in there I thought was very interesting. I don't know the truth of that any more than you know the truth of that. What I do know is, and you've had pregnancies, Julia, I bet you speculated during those pregnancies what the baby would be like, what the hair colour would be. You know, I mean, look, I don't know. What I do know is this. If she is trying, which I think she is, to point the finger of racism at the British royal family, and of course in America, she has mover's advantage on this. She's getting her side of the story in first. But I think we should point back to Americans who've swallowed that hook, line and sinker and say this. For nearly 70 years, the Queen has headed up the Commonwealth, an organisation with 2.3 billion people in it, the vast majority of whom are Asian and black. And not just the Queen, but the extended royal family have done all they can for the Commonwealth. The idea that the royal family is racist does not actually stand up to 70 years of loyal and dedicated service. So if somebody in the royal family made an inappropriate comment, that is possible, but it's being used to damage the monarchy. And whatever I think of Meghan Markle, giving the performance of her life as an actress, the person I'm really angry with is Prince Harry. To betray your family in public like that is nothing short of despicable.